Okay, I talked to you yesterday about what we talked about in class, and I wanted you to watch the real world scenarios on your own. Watching the whole video, that would be, what would make sense to watch the whole thing, and I think it's really important to do so. So we'll just sit and watch this one together and discuss anything that comes up.
So science knows that burning fossil fuels creates a ton of CO2, and it predicts that more CO2 will heat up the Earth.
Right.
And we're seeing these predictions come true, and a ton of bad stuff's already happening to people. So why do we keep hearing that climate change is just normal, or no big deal? Or that it's like not happening at all, like it's just some big hoax?
Oh, you know what? I kind of can't talk about this right now, so I'm gonna... I'm just joking.
I swear.
Let's look at both those claims head on. It's true that the climate has changed for natural reasons, mainly due to variations in the Earth's orbit. But usually it happens slowly over thousands of years, so animals and even early humans had a chance to evolve and adapt. But now we're seeing levels of CO2 pollution spike super fast, over just a few decades.
What? That's not normal.
Nope. Can we adapt to such sudden changes? I don't know. I mean, how can billions of people pick up their cities and move to a safer spot? We're in deep trouble if this gets out of control. So yeah, the climate does change on its own, but what we're seeing today, this time it's on us humans. Then there are some people that say climate change isn't happening at all, that it's some giant conspiracy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay, so the first part of this is whenever they're talking about, but climate change does happen. And that's what people say, the world, the temperature has changed from the beginning of time. And that's true. And we talked about that already in one of the videos that I made for you guys. But the difference is whenever we're talking about those changes, those temperature changes took place over thousands of years. So that's what's different between then and now, is those thousands of years gave all those living organisms, all the animals, all the plants, everything a chance to adapt to those changes. Since things are happening so fast, are we able to adapt as a species? Not just as far as are we able to adapt as individuals, are we able to adapt everything that we do around us?
Many of these people know how to use YouTube. But very few of them are actual climate scientists. In fact, many aren't scientists at all. Ask climate scientists, and 97% of them will tell you that it's real and humans are causing it. So, who are you gonna believe? Say 9 out of 10 dentists tell you you need a root canal, but then a professional Minecraft player tells you you don't. You wouldn't want to believe the dentist, but you would, right?
Right.
So why does it seem like we're not sure about climate change? Because a small number of people are screaming loudly, trying to make you believe that we just don't have enough information to be sure yet.
Why would anyone want to do that?
Well, some of them are too scared to face the truth. Others think caring about climate change is a political issue. But carbon dioxide isn't a Republican or a Democrat. It just traps heat. And then there are people who are afraid that admitting the problem is real will hurt their businesses. They spend huge amounts of money to spread lies designed to make us believe that the science isn't settled.
But that's just dishonest and dangerous.
Exactly. We do have a problem, and the sooner we face it, the sooner we can do something about it.
I always tell my students, you only know what you're told. So this is one of those things that I keep repeating, is you only know what you're told. So, and you only can believe what you choose to listen to. You always have to look at, when you're looking at the scientific, when you're looking at facts, you have to look at the source of the information. Now, we've talked already throughout these videos, and I've explained the science and the research that's been behind all of the stuff that we've talked about. We talked about how they took those ice core samples to measure the amount of CO2 over thousands of years. I talked to you about the science behind, right, how we know burning those fossil fuels releases that carbon dioxide. We know that there is a certain amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's necessary and why it's there. And we know that there's a lot more there now than there was 100 or so years ago. Okay, so that's whenever we're looking at why do people not want to believe the science? Because it's scary. And that's what, and as far as the manipulation in the media, you only know what you're told. So you can, as long as you have, and that's what I always look for, as long as I have some sort of solid source of evidence that proves that something is false, I don't share that information. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, we've covered a lot, but let's take a big step back and see what we're dealing with. What would this whole crazy situation look like to aliens looking down on us from space?
Well, I didn't know you do that.
They'd see a beautiful planet teeming with life. The smartest species on the planet has discovered stuff in the ground to burn, and it let them take over the whole planet. But that stuff is filling the air with an invisible gas called CO2 and causing the climate to change in dangerous ways. Luckily, some of them are scientists, and they discovered the problem before it was too late. But instead of acting on what they know, they're arguing about whether it's more important to save their beautiful planet and themselves, or just keep doing what they're used to doing. Many choose to ignore the whole thing, and for a long time, they do nothing. Things get worse and worse. But just when it seems like all is lost, some of these humans who have the most at stake start talking to each other. They start standing up for their futures. They find their voices. And they change everything. Could that really happen? Let's find out.
Well, that was a silly little clip. Moving on to the next one.
So, this leads us to the most important question of our lifetimes. No. Who will win, climate change or us? To answer this question, we need to ask two more questions. Can we power our lives with far less CO2? And if the answer to that is yes, will we choose to do it?
Answering the first question, that's pretty straightforward. The second, well, that depends on a few things. One of them is you.
So, question one. Scientists say that to protect ourselves from the worst effects of climate change, we need to make sure average global temperatures don't rise more than 2 degrees Celsius. And 1 degree.
Okay.
We've already gone
Sorry,
up almost
kept pausing. But if you look at this, look over time as far as the temperature staying relatively constant. And then this definitely isn't the technological age or the Industrial Revolution in 1950. So what is happening here? Well, we're looking at more cars, more efficient, not efficient, but more people because we're healthier. So we have more things, we're driving places, we're flying places. So the more people there are, the more CO2 emissions there are going to be, and the higher the global temperature is going to become. So if you look at how this is just within the last, from 1975 until now. Hey, down here, this is about when I was born and things were pretty normal. Things were pretty, that's nuts though, that things were pretty normal back in 1970, and then how much things have changed just in my lifetime. And I can tell.
Yikes! That means we need to cut our fossil fuel habit fast.
How are we going to do that? Let's break it down. Most of the fossil fuels we burn are used to make electricity and move us around. So wouldn't it be great if some giant brain geniuses could invent ways to power our buildings, devices, and cars without using fossil fuels?
We already have. Check it out. Most electricity is made by turning a turbine connected to a generator. Power plants that use fossil fuels make this happen by burning coal or natural gas, which heats water, which makes steam, which spins the turbine.
Steam sounds a little old-fashioned, right? It is, because you can also turn a turbine with wind or water.
Or you can skip the turbine altogether and, like a tree, pull energy directly from the sun with solar panels.
These are called renewable energy sources because they never run out, unlike fossil fuels, which will eventually run out.
And CO2? There's none of that.
What about getting around? You still need gas, right? Less and less. Electric trains and buses are already moving people around many cities, and many more are joining in. Electric cars used to look like golf carts, but now some of the fastest, best performing cars in the world are electric. And if you produce electricity from renewable sources, then these cars can truly run CO2 free.
So we can make better energy, but we also can use amazing technology that demands much less of it. This LED light bulb uses 1/6 of the energy of this old-fashioned one. This insulation is so good at keeping indoor temperatures comfortable, people can use their heater or AC less.
And millions of people who have realized it's more important to live well than live large are choosing to bike rather than drive, finding more exciting things to do than shop, and are taking pride in wasting less. All of this cuts down on our need for energy.
So one question, Chance.
Yeah?
Building all this wind and solar, all this insulation, new light bulbs, how is our country going to afford this?
Switching over to renewable energy actually creates way more well-paying jobs than sticking with fossil fuels. It's a huge opportunity for new businesses to grow, invent, and thrive. And the change costs less than a lot of people think. Renewables are getting cheaper fast. In fact, in more and more places, renewable energy now costs less than old-fashioned fossil fuels.
Economists say that climate change is already costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and it's getting worse. Not making the switch is what's really expensive.
It costs money to connect everyone with telephone lines, to build America's highways, to build colleges and hospitals, and to create the internet. But these things made life better. And isn't that what money's for?
Okay, we've got the answer to the first question. Can we do it? Yes. With technology we've already invented, we've got a great start, and it will only get better as we invent more. But what about the second question? Will we choose to?
Okay, so to go back, and when they talked about the different things that we use energy for, or the different the changes we could make. We can walk instead of drive, which is difficult because we're so far away from everything. Except you live in town, you can walk, ride your bike. I know I see a lot of people in Katanning that have the bikes that as you pedal, it actually generates fuel, or it's like movement generated power. So then it's like a little scooter or motorcycle just by riding your bike. What else? What other changes can you make? Changing your light bulbs. That's the incandescent bulbs, the old-fashioned ones that get really, really hot. They waste a lot of energy making that heat so that they can make that light. So you have the LEDs, which are the light emitting diodes, and they don't use a lot of electricity at all, and they're actually brighter. What else? Better insulation in your house. One of the things that I do, our house is older, so I put the plastic over the windows to keep the cold out so that we can lower our heat. We keep doors closed in rooms that we don't use. at any time. One of the things that we don't realize, that as long as something is plugged in, whether you have it turned on or not, it is drawing electricity. You're actually using electricity when you're not even using anything. So that's one thing that you could do to try to make a little difference, is to unplug things that you aren't using. That seems silly, and that's, everybody thinks, well, so what? I'm one person. But if every single person said, so what, I'm one person, or every single person made that one change, that's a difference. It takes one, you're the drop in the bucket, right? You have to be like the one person that starts making the change and spreading those words. There's so much more in these videos to share as well. Okay.
So, will we choose to take on climate change? For years, it kind of looked like the answer was no.
Yeah, everyone just argued over whether it was real, if we should do something, or if we could.
But then, people everywhere began to get loud and say enough is enough. Thousands marched in the streets.
Finally, in 2015, almost 200 countries from all around the world got together and signed the Paris Climate Accord, an agreement to keep global temperatures from rising above 2 degrees Celsius.
Hey, all right. So we're all good.
Oh, not exactly. Now the real work begins. We gotta make sure they keep their promises. That's not automatic. It's important for the world that the US steps up here.
Yeah, we can't just sit back and wait for our leaders to solve this. We're running out of time. You know what they say? When the people lead, the leaders will follow.
But how does that happen?
When people change the world, it usually starts with a lot of them awakening to the truth of what's really going on around them.
That's already starting to happen with climate change. We're getting it. Today, over 90% of people under the age of 30 agree that climate change is a real problem and humans are responsible.
Because I'm a minor, no one really thinks that I can do much to fight climate change. I want to prove them wrong. I can't stop climate change.
Young people are going to be the ones to really see the damages that climate change is going to cause. Everybody will be affected, regardless of the circumstances.
It hurts to read every single day about the species that are being lost, about the pipelines that are going through indigenous lands without consent.
People think that climate change is some far-off problem, but it's not. It's happening right here and right now.
I hope people wake up and see that climate change is happening. People are losing lives and homes. It's real.
Next, it takes lots of people doing something to show they care. There's thousands of young people out there speaking up about climate change right now, online, at home, and in their communities.
Your voice matters, and we are shaping the future for future generations.
It's time to take action. One of the best ways to start is by voting.
It shows our elected representatives that climate change is something we're passionate about and something we're prepared to fight for.
I educate my peers on environmental justice.
I spoke at the State House in front of politicians.
The global climate strikes are providing this message that allows us to really get the world's attention.
That is why I'm here, to raise my voice for a better and brighter future that we can all create together.
All these everyday actions give support and power to a small group of people who are willing to lead, even dedicate their careers and lives to driving change. No one is too young to lead. In fact, some of the most passionate and influential leaders in this world are high school and college students.
We want a green future. We want better, more efficient energy sources. We want a clean environment for all of us to live in. We're passionate about making this a light to remember.
Now, this is our time Together, we can change the world and stop climate change.
There's one last video clip for you to watch. Listen to the message.
Okay, before you go, I want to tell you one last story. There was once a young man who was on his way to visit his grandmother when he was jumped by a bunch of guys from his neighborhood. They knocked him over and pushed his face in the dirt. When he arrived at his grandmother's house, he was angry. He wanted revenge. "Grandma," he said, "how can I fight back? They're bigger and stronger than me." His grandmother smiled. "There's also a fight going on inside of me," she said. "It's between two wolves. One is strong. It is ignorance, fear, and hate. But the other wolf is strong too. That one is love, hope, and generosity." The young man asked, "Grandma, which wolf will win?" And his grandmother replied, "The one I feed."
Right now, there's a fight going on for our future. Climate change is real and it's unfair.
You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to believe we're powerless to change it.
Or you can choose to care, to hope, and to take action. Climate change is a huge challenge, but it's also an amazing opportunity for our generation to come together, to find our power, and to become leaders.
Don't wait for someone else to step up. The world needs you.
There you have it. Our climate, our future. Your climate, your future. Okay, I showed you that video that things have changed so quickly in my lifetime, and you weren't even around. You guys haven't been around that long, and you have been in the middle of this huge change, and you need to stop it. So, as far as looking at that and you being able to make a change and what can you possibly do, let's take a look at Greta Thunberg. When talking about if one person can make a difference, this one person makes and is trying to make a huge difference. Let's listen to part of what Greta Thunberg has to say.
I know many of you don't want to listen to us. You say we are just children. But we are only repeating the message of the United Climate Science. Many of you appear concerned that we are wasting valuable lesson time, but I assure you we will go back to school the moment you start listening to the science and give us a future. Is that really too much to ask? Now we probably don't even have a future anymore. Because that future was sold so that a small number of people could make unimaginable amounts of money. It was stolen from us every time you said that the sky was the limit and that you only live once. The UK's active current support of new exploitations of fossil fuels, like for example the UK shale gas fracking industry, the expansion of this North Sea oil and gas. The expansion of airports, as well as the planning permission for a brand new coal mine, is beyond absurd. Did you hear me? Yes. Is my English okay? Yes. Because I'm beginning to wonder. During the last 6 months, I've traveled around Europe for hundreds of hours in trains, electric cars and buses, repeating these life-changing words over and over again. But no one seems to be talking about it. And nothing has changed. In fact, the emissions are still rising.
Okay. Greta actually is one, obviously you see that she is one person. She's borderline autistic. She has very strong Asperger's syndrome. She is a genius, because as soon as she heard about the plight of the climate, she kind of shut down and went into her own world. She would talk to no one for 3 years. She barely ate. And this is just something that is part of that disorder. And she would read and she would study, and she decided it was time to make a change. So she went on strike. She sat alone in her town with a sign, and it was about striking and making a difference in climate change. She wasn't going to school, but she had a purpose. And people started watching and looking and asking. And then more people came to sit with her, and more people listened. And she started to travel. So whenever the video that you just watched, and it had all of those protests and all of those students and all of those people, those were started by Greta. Greta is the person who was the momentum for that change. She's one person. This is someone that in the video, the clip that you just watched, and she's like, can you hear me? Is my English okay? Is this mic on? And they laughed. She said this, and she had spoken to so many places, and she actually asked that at one point and started to cry, because she is speaking and is passionate and goes with statistics and does the research and all of the facts, the things that I can't even begin to look for that information. And no change has been made. And that's what she just said in that clip. She's like, emissions continue to rise. People, the politicians want their pictures taken with her. And, you know, they want that magazine value, that headlines, and look at me, I'm with Greta. But they're not making any change. It's not making a difference. It wasn't at the time. So these are the things that we need to look at. What changes can we make? And I keep saying we, it needs to be you. You are the leaders. You need to be the leaders. You need to find a way. And if there's something, if you want a way, you have to ask others in which direction to go. I'm not a political science person. I'm a science person. But there's got to be people that we could get in touch with to see what actions we could take. The girl in Miami, when she said it was ground zero in Florida, that was one high school student who made all of those changes and all of those contacts and caused then Miami to be a climate emergency zone. So those are things that looking for making a change. The Paris Climate Accord, that is something that, 200 countries signed that. And then our country, Donald Trump, made the choice to withdraw from that. Now, it could be because he said that climate change is fake news, that there is no science to support climate change. But then there are also other things that say the reason he did that is because the money was being funneled into wrong or not the correct places that it should be going into. Those are the things that we don't know. We don't know the truth behind that. But the one thing you do know at this point is that climate change is real.